Hello and welcome back to Professional Tutors, the British online school. We are a unique team of qualified and dedicated teachers here to help our students to reach their full potential. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about congruency. So we'll look at how can we tell that different shapes are congruent. What are the rules and what are the type of exam questions they are going to ask us. So in this one, how many different triangles can we make on a 3x3 pin board? There are lots of options. There are lots of options we can do that. What we need to understand from here, they will give you this sign in exam. So A, B, C, D, and this sign, and then R, S, T, U. Now this sign means that they are identical, that these two shapes are mathematically identical. Now when we say identical, the key word you're going to use in the exam is this, the corresponding side and corresponding angles. Now, if two shapes or two or more shapes, they are mathematically identical, that means the corresponding sides in both the shapes are going to be equal and the corresponding angles are going to be equal as well. So the key word in this topic we need to understand, so all the questions in this topic have got the same answer, right? So two shapes will be identical or mathematically identical or congruent if the corresponding sides are equal and corresponding angles are equal. So in this case, if they are mathematically identical, that means the corresponding sides would be equal and corresponding angles would be equal as well. So which side on the red quadrilateral corresponds to AB? So AB is here, and so AB corresponds to RS on this, and the vertex corresponds to C. Here is the T, and which angle corresponds to STU? So STU is 85 degrees, and that's going to be equal to B, C, and T, and the length of RU. So RU is going to be same as AD. Now, even if you rotate the shape, the shapes will still be congruent because the orientation doesn't change anything. The orientation doesn't change the angles. The orientation doesn't change the length of the sides at all. So don't just get confused if the shapes are drawn in a different way, if they're rotated or reflected. The angles, the corresponding angles are still going to be the same, and corresponding lengths or the sides are still going to be equal if two shapes are going to be congruent. Guys, these are very important key points. So congruent shapes, they are mathematically identical. So wherever you see this sign in exam questions, that means the shapes are congruent. That means they are mathematically identical. And if they are congruent, that means the corresponding sides are going to have exactly the same length. Make sure you use that word, corresponding sides. So if the shapes are congruent, that means the corresponding sides are going to be equal, and corresponding angles, they are going to be equal as well. That is how we're going to word our answer in exam. So congruent side or corresponding sides, if the shape is congruent, the corresponding sides have got exact same length. And if the shapes are congruent, the corresponding angles are going to be the same. Now, the most important thing If the shapes are congruent, that means corresponding sides, corresponding angles, and corresponding faces, etc., they're all going to be exactly the same. In exam, they won't ask you anything else. They will restrict ourselves, or they will only ask you to look at two things: sides and angles. So regardless, the question in exam, any question in exam, your answer, the way you're going to write your answer will more or less remain the same. And the way you're going to word your answer, that if the shapes are congruent, that means the corresponding sides are going to be equal, and corresponding angles, they are going to be equal as well. Let's have a look at this scenario here. These are all triangles. Now we need to look at, are they all different? Now where we want our question, or what we want to answer or look at in this scenario, whether all these triangles are going to be congruent or not. That is what we want to discuss. The way we're going to answer this question in exam, that these shapes or these triangles, all of them, they are congruent because the corresponding sides are equal in all of them, and the corresponding angles, so all the angles, they are equal. So the length of this, all the sides are equal. If you look at these dots, they are all having the same pattern, and so corresponding lengths are equal and corresponding angles are equal. Again, the way we have to write that in exam, always use the same phrase for every single answer. So these triangles are congruent because corresponding sides are equal and corresponding angles are equal as well. Right, so congruent shapes are mathematically identical. You can rotate it, you can reflect it. So let's have a look at this question here, the quick one. So Harry draws a trapezium, then rotate it 90 degrees. Guys, singular is trapezium, plural is trapezium. So which statement is true? They're all congruent because all trapezia are congruent. They're all congruent because rotating a trapezia does not change its size and shape. They're not congruent because rotating the trapezium changes its side lengths, and they're not congruent because rotating the trapezium changes its angle measures. So for this, always remember, if you rotate or reflect any shape, in this case is trapezium, so if you rotate or reflect any shape, rotation or reflection does not change the size or the shape, the length of the sides, the measure of the angles. Everything is going to stay the same. So rotation and reflection doesn't change any measures at all. Right, is it possible to know whether any of these shapes are congruent? So we can't tell, it's not possible to tell whether these shapes are congruent because we haven't got any measurements. They haven't given us any length of the sides or any angles. They haven't given us anything at all. So it's not possible to tell whether these shapes are congruent or not. Let's have a look at this question. Are the following shapes congruent? Okay, guys, have a look at this. So remember, if you rotate the shape, if you reflect the shape, or let's say if you move the shape in any other fashion, as long as you'll find the corresponding sides, and if they are equal, and corresponding angles are equal, that means the shapes are going to be congruent. So in this case, you got 6 centimeter here, and you got 6 centimeter here. You got 7 centimeter here. You got 7 centimeter here. That means they are corresponding sides. 5 centimeters here, 5 centimeters here, again corresponding sides. And then you got 3 centimeter here and 3 centimeter here. So both of them are 3 centimeter, both of them are 3 centimeters. So again, these are corresponding sides. 3 right angles, so corresponding angles are equal, and 2 angles are 135, 135. So all of them, so sides, all the sides are corresponding sides, and all the angles are corresponding angles as well. So if you look at AB is corresponding to PQ, BC is corresponding to RQ, and then you've got CD is corresponding to RS, and then you've got DE corresponding to ST, and then you've got EA corresponding to TP. And ABCD is congruent to PQRST because all the corresponding sides are equal and all the corresponding angles are equal. So guys, regardless of what they're going to ask you in exam, that is going to be your standard answer. So the shapes are congruent. That means what? There are 2 scenarios, 2 statements you have to write. The shapes are congruent only if the corresponding sides are equal and corresponding angles are equal. If you look at 2 shapes, you can look at the examples of a rectangle and a parallelogram, or a square and a rhombus. So these 2 examples where the sides are going to remain the same, but the angles are going to be different.
Okay.
For example, we can look here. That's a square here. That's the rhombus. Sides are equal, but in a square, all the angles are 90 degrees, but in a rhombus, the sides are still going to be equal, but angles are not going to be 90 degrees. That's an example of the shapes where the sides are the same, but angles are different. So always remember, so orientation doesn't change the length of the sides or the angles at all. So it doesn't matter which way you rotate or which way you draw the shape, whether it's reflection, rotation, or any other orientation, the corresponding angles are going to be equal and corresponding sides are going to be equal as well. Right, guys, just have a look at these questions. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do these questions and we're going to discuss those answers.
So we've got like 5 minutes.
Okay, guys, so in this one, for these 2 shapes, they are not congruent because although the corresponding sides are equal, but corresponding angles are not equal. And in this case, both of them are regular hexagons. That means the corresponding angles are equal, but corresponding sides are not equal at all. So they're not going to be congruent. So always remember, if the shape, the 2 or more shapes, if they're congruent, that means they are going to be mathematically similar or identical, not similar, identical. That means their corresponding sides are going to be equal and corresponding angles are going to be equal as well. So let's discuss all the rules, what we're going to use. So the very first rule, 2 shapes, all the corresponding sides are going to be equal. So if 2 or more shapes and corresponding sides are equal, for example, in these two triangles and these two triangles, all three corresponding sides are equal. If that's the case, the rule we're going to use is side, side, side. That is exactly what we're going to write in the exam. So when the three sides of one triangle are equal to the corresponding three sides of the other triangle or the other shape, the two shapes, in this case, two triangles, are going to be congruent. For the next one, what they're giving us here, two sides are equal in both the shapes, and the included angle is equal as well. It's very important to note this. They're not talking about this angle or this angle. They're talking about the angle which is included between the two corresponding sides in both the shapes. So if the two sides or corresponding sides are equal and included angle is equal, in this case, the rule is going to be SAS, side, angle, side. So when two sides and the included angle in one shape, in this case is a triangle, in one shape or one triangle is equal to the corresponding sides and the included angle in the other triangle, the two triangles are going to be congruent, and the rule for this is SAS. So in this case, in these shapes, we have got two corresponding angles are equal, and the included, that's a key word, included side is equal as well. In these two shapes and these two shapes and these two shapes, in all of them, two corresponding angles are equal, and the included, that's a key word, included side is equal as well. So the rule is going to be angle, side, angle. So it's angle, side, angle. So when two angles and the included side in one triangle are equal to the corresponding two angles and the included side of the other triangle, then the two triangles are said to be congruent. Very important, guys. So if they'll give you a right angle, the corresponding right angles, well, they are equal, hypotenuse are equal, and one of the sides are equal, then the rule we're going to use is going to be RHS. So R is for right angle, H is for hypotenuse, and S is for side. The same thing again. If the hypotenuse on one side and the one right angle in a triangle is equal to the other, then the triangles are going to be congruent. Always remember, if two corresponding angles are equal, that's the key word here, non-included side. So non-included side are equal, then the rule is going to be angle, angle, side. AS. Do not confuse yourself with ASA rule, which we have just done a minute ago. So if the included side is equal in exam, you're going to write ASA. And if it's the non-included side, then you're going to write AAS. So now we have done all the rules. So let's try to apply those rules to answer some exam questions. And we're going to look at how we can write the answer in the exam. So let's have a look at all the rules we have done. SSS, that's not going to follow this. Angle side angle, that's not going to follow this this congruency. AAS, that's not right again. RHS is not right again. And SAS seems the right option. So side, angle, side. So that's going to be the correct answer. So the way we write the answer in exam is very, very simple. So all you need to write to get 2 marks, the triangles are congruent due to SAS. That's it really. Whenever you say 2 right triangle, right triangle, there's always going to be the standard answer, right? So that's always going to be, that is the rule which is exclusively for the triangles with right angles. So it's going to be right angle, hypotenuse, side. The way you're going to write that answer in exam, the triangles are congruent due to RHS. For this one, it's going to be SSS.
Yeah.
Right, so it's side, angle, and side, so it's SAS.
Yeah.
Right, guys, just have a look at these questions. I'll give you a couple of minutes, and then we're going to discuss the answers. Let's say I'll give you 2 minutes, and then we're going to discuss the answers. Have a look. So that is going to be RHS because that's a right angle triangle. That's going to be SSS, side, side, side. That's going to be SAS, side angle, side. And that's going to be A, and S. This one here, with these 2, explain why the following triangles are congruent. Again, 2 angles are the same, and one side, and the corresponding sides are the same. So the rule they're going to follow, 2 angles, one starts with angle, side, angle. Thanks for watching. If you find the information useful, please subscribe, share, and like the video.